Okay, guys, welcome here. And my name is Felipe Pires. I'm a member of the core team at the Red Team Village, primarily director of the sponsors. In other words, I'm responsible for helping our sponsors. And it's a pleasure to have you guys on board another year. And thank you so much again for supporting us and supporting our village. So, first of all, please introduce yourself and describe what do you do here or what do you do at Amazon.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start. So I'm David. I'm a principal security engineer at Amazon. My role is supporting red team operations and threat research. Um, I previously worked in the security consultancy space. So like what drew me to Amazon was like the scale and variety. So I really love the fact that you can be working like for 1 week you're working in the entertainment or film industry, and the next week I'm looking at a device used by many millions of people. So that's pretty much it for me.
All right. And I'm Joe Scampatello, and I'm a senior technical program manager at Amazon. So I oversee and support the Red Team and Threat Research Program, focus on devices and services, just like David. We also focus on specialized businesses like AGI, Amazon Studios, games, and even Project Kuiper. I've been in this field for about 10 years now. Prior to joining Amazon, I also worked in consulting where I focus on offensive cyber operations as a red teamer.
Hey all, I am Joe Vest. I am a principal security engineer as well, and I would say former red teamer in the Amazon space. My background, I've done a lot of red teaming. I know, Joe, you said you've been in the space for about 10 years. I think I started red teaming about 15 years ago. That's a long time. And now what I've done, I've actually shifted from the red space and shifted over to blue, and I work in the platform space. So all of the tools and that we use to gather telemetry and use for the defensive side. So the inverse. So now I take all my knowledge on the red teaming space and the threat space, and I try to apply it to our defensive side.
That's amazing, guys. And so that's cool. So talking about the red team and what is the vision for the red team in your specifically team at the Amazon right now?
Yeah, I can probably kick us off on this one. I think our long term vision and that number one mission that we have is to make it impossible for adversaries to impact our customers, right? So I think that's pretty much the goal and fundamental driver for all the work that we do is to make sure that we're protecting our customers' data and privacy. Because at the end of the day, they're relying on us and trusting us when they use our products and services in their homes. So I think like what sets our approach apart to red teaming is the diverse perspective that we gain from like the scale and scope of what we test. We're looking at everything from the Echo in your living room to AI systems, cloud infrastructure, even satellites in space now that communicating back down to our ground stations, right? So I think this gives us a pretty unique, vantage point when simulating threat actors. We're looking at how all these different systems are working together, and also trying to understand how adversaries are going to try to use these interactions as pivot points to try to take advantage of these systems, right? I think given the scale, we have to be really thoughtful about how we prioritize our efforts, just because there's just so much to look at. We use threat intelligence, trends, even like operational metrics from our team to make sure we're focusing on the right areas that have the biggest impact for our security program and ultimately for our customers.
Yeah, I could go next. So I guess like to say like my vision from where I came in to Amazon is that I before coming to Amazon I worked at some of the more boutique red team consultancies. So like I had in my mind like what the red team term meant, and like I held a pretty high bar for like what that meant. And so one thing that I've held true since like coming here is try to uphold that bar for like what I think red teaming means and where it should be. And like that's quite difficult, or it's kind of challenging when you switch to an internal red team from an external. There's a lot more things and things that try to grab your attention, or there's like internal processes, or there's maybe like biases that might try and take you down a specific way of thinking. And what I've tried to hold true for the team is to try and like make it as natural as possible so that we operate in a natural way. We're unbiased, we're thinking like adversaries, and staying true to that. But also the other side of that is like making sure that we don't upset internal stakeholders, and we continue to build their trust, and they trust like what we're doing, and they see the value of like why we're going about our mission, and allow us to do things in a natural way as possible. And I guess going through the engagement life cycles, from like planning, execution to reporting, we get to meet with lots of different teams. As you can imagine, a company of this scale, you get to work with a lot of different teams. And also, like, I'm always like blown away by some of the subject matter experts that we have in house. So like the people who invent pretty fundamental technologies that we all rely on, like, there's usually people who know that better than most people in the world. And I've been blown away with some of them interactions that I've had here.
Yeah, that's good, David. When I look at this, I look at the vision as we're trying to push back. I call it adversary disruption, or pushing back on a threat, similar to what Joe was talking about. And I look at this as the vision is red teaming as a whole. Is just not one side. It's just not a team finding a bunch of things that are wrong. It is actually driving some sort of action, which means understanding your customers, understanding the technology, understanding everything that really fundamentally has to be done. And if you look at, especially the role that I play in now, from former red teamer now to shifting over, I play a lot of that translation layer to help educate and make sure our defensive community understands what happens from this threat perspective and actually how to utilize it. And that goes both ways. And this also gives a path for the red team to say, well, how does this system work? Because as you mentioned, David, there's a lot of people who invent things and build stuff that not everyone knows. We can't know all these things, but we understand the threat perspective and we know how to apply the threat perspective to these different environments. So that gives us the ability to balance both sides. So ultimately, again, like I like what you said, Joe, is we're trying to minimize the threat's ability to be successful. That's really what we're here for.
That's amazing, guys. That's amazing. How does your team at Amazon see red team votes and mainly make impacts in this field? I think this is an interesting question because like everyone are seeing Amazon, like for the security perspective, defensive side, offensive side, and cloud security, whatever. But how is in your team see this red team or make impacts? Because like we are talking about not only helping customers or helping the decision makers or other people, but changing life is making different like impacts in different lives. How do you see, guys, those type of things?
So I would say that, like, well, red teaming as a topic or discipline is like very dynamic, and we generally work backwards from like goals. So, and like, because like we're keeping our finger on the pulse of like threat research, and which we bring close to our teams. There's always going to be new scenarios to try and prove out, and techniques to kind of try and understand and defend against. As Joe was saying, like, we've got to see both sides of the coin. We've got to play into different teams, across teams. And so we're constantly adapting to keep up with like the changing threat landscape. And like, more recently that's included, for example, like AI enabled techniques, and like what are the connotations of like where AI is coming into this, like what's the result of like that being more widely adopted, both on the defensive side and on the offensive side, and by adversaries.
Yeah, I think to kind of pull on that thread a little bit more, right? So, I mean, you mentioned AI. I think we'd be naive to think our adversaries aren't already using AI to enhance their operations, right? I mean, we know they are. We see them using it actively, right? So, I think as an industry and as a red team, we're actively evolving to incorporate AI more into our offensive tradecraft as well. Whether that's using it to analyze our attack surface, or more effectively develop new techniques or payloads to achieve our objectives. I think ultimately it's still pretty early days for AI, but there's really like a good opportunity here to evolve alongside it and make broader impacts in our operations and in our organization. So I think really the key element here is that human element, that creative, like strategic thinking that we have as red teamers. I think that's going to be really important, as we think about how to balance AI with our proven methodologies.
Yeah, I want to, David, you're talking about red teaming and a high bar. I think when you look at the history of red teaming, we talk about the evolution. I want to say that's just baked into the concept of red teaming, because what was cool and hot 5 years ago is now old, and and then we have some new things. AI is the new thing, and then there'll be more new things. And if you just look back over history, there's always the, oh my gosh, there's something going on there, everything is bad. But when you break that down to the fundamentals and you follow that real high bar red teaming process, you're always prepared to deal with whatever new things happening. Because whether that's personally, because I don't know all technologies of all things, but I know how to apply a threat perspective and I know how to gain the right resources to do this, or some new technology. AI is a great thing that's speeding up processes, maybe enabling threat actors, but also enabling us. So I really think it's just maintain that high bar in red teaming. The evolution of that as a trade just naturally occurs, which means you need to be ready to be in a constant learning mode. You can't really sit still in the red teaming space.
Yeah, and talk about AI, guys. So, how's your team leveraging AI or artificial intelligence within this red team operation? How do you see this leveraging about the AI?
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
I can start, but you can add more. I'm sure, Joe. But I think one thing which is pretty obvious is AI is really fantastic at summarization, and basically if you seed AI with some intelligently created data feeds and which are relevant to your operation and its planning and other things like threat intelligence maybe, you get pretty good results. And that's something that we've been looking at, and we've been using AI to kind of apply logic at scale. So things that we would usually use a human to have to look at some data and actually spot some trend or something. So this enables us to provide contextual information kind of as we go through an operation, which really supports the operator as we go.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I think it's super useful when you're executing an op to be able to develop new tools and scripts on the fly. I think just a lot faster. You're able to debug quicker, even create more stealthy payloads. Really isn't any different from how we're seeing adversaries already leveraging AI to do a lot of this or already, right? I mean, we see them with social engineering. I'm sure you got a million phishing emails in your inbox right now that look AI generated. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're ultimately trying to simulate this adversarial behavior. So it's kind of important to weave AI to some of those tactics where it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And seeing this from the other side, the result side, the process of summarization and unstructured data is huge. I'm seeing some really, really good promise on taking this information that an analyst would normally have to do and try to decompose that into something. And what I see is the opportunity to not replace the people, but help them augment some of these long, tedious tasks, so that instead of having this wide area of search, now you can kind of aim in over this way. And this works on the red side or the blue side. I mean, I was just doing some things, writing some code, testing out some AI functionality, and I learned more. I learned some things about Python that I did not realize. I was like, oh, I've never used that sort of functionality, but it was something there. So those of us who are in the security side who may not be a dev first, it gives us a little leg up to create proof of concepts, to understand things, to rapid prototype. And all of those, just like the threats, are doing the same. And what I look at is I see a benefit is we are professional security team members, not saying the threat's not, but this also raises the bar so that the threats who are utilizing this stuff is not a lot different than they just download a random tool and now they use it. So I actually feel like we have a lot of you can get to market quicker from a threat side, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to give them an advantage over normal, what I'll call script kiddie type tools. So I think there's an advantage that we potentially have. At least I'm trying to stay positive on that.
That's interesting because, in my perspective, I think we have many advantage for the offensive side. Let's say the red teamers, and on the other hand, because I have an experience for both sides. Like in my career, I work with the defensive side and the red team and as well. And I think it's for the offensive perspective, the guys is more used to scripting things. On the other hand, for the blue teams, like the defensive side, they don't use it like the scripted thing. So I think the AI can help those guys, like Joe says about the Python and some kind of different instructions in using Python or whatever another two programming language they would like to use. Is interesting. And talk about this AI actually is, growing many very fast, actually, the advancements about the AI. So what kind of opportunity, guys, or challenge you are seeing in your team for the red team operation, especially regarding the automations, detection evasions, or even like privacy, ethical consideration, or something about those different things?
I'll start on this one. What I'm seeing now is it emphasizes the fundamentals of security are even more important. When you look at designing or building a system, whether you're going to defend it or attack it, it's all about understanding the primitives. We talk about least privilege and restricting access and all of these things. Those don't change whether you're using AI or not. And I think what AI does is it can speed up the process of analyzing and understanding those primitives that you've already decided. So, from a red team side, you analyze the system and you're looking at how am I going to violate the defensive assumptions that are in this system. I mean, you don't know what defenses are there, but you're an intelligent person who understands how to attack a system, and you build out a plan to violate those defensive assumptions. And I think that just raises the bar to get to there quicker. Perhaps we can take some of the bar and raise it a little bit to give to our defenders so they don't need the human in the loop as quickly, and that allows our red teamers to focus on the more difficult, more nuanced type pieces. But that's really what I'm seeing. The real opportunities is to allow us to hone in on those fundamentals, because again, that doesn't change. Those are still there. We still have the defensive assumptions, and the defensive primitives still exist.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Joe, that I think one thing which I had in mind was like something that would have normally, I think you said earlier, actually, an analyst would have to look at to like something where it like doesn't pass the sniff test, so you can actually scale that. Like AI can usually like flag or prioritize like anomalies in data or like logs or things like that. The other areas that I've seen is like I think we've touched upon is like exploit development's it is much easier with AI assisted, and that means that you can turn around um, proof of concepts quicker. Um, Things like reverse engineering and like code review can be like sped up, or like someone who maybe like I've seen situations where previously in consultancy space there was maybe 10 people in the consultancy who had that expertise to do a very niche code review, and that's much easier now. It's like language agnostic, so you could be like code review in some weird programming language, and AI would make it a lot easier, and you could probably convert it to a pseudocode or do something like that. And the other places like on the defensive side, Joe, I think it's like things like extracting IOCs from threat intelligence, things like that make it a lot easier to kind of like pull data, as you say, from, I think you said it, like unstructured data, like, and pulling relevant pieces out.
Yeah, a big plus one on the automation of some of the more mundane tasks that I think we sometimes hate as red teamers, right? I mean, some of the more boring like reconnaissance tasks and actually like going through and combing through all your scan data, right? So all that unstructured data that we would typically have to comb through, you can do that within seconds now, just plugging it into AI. But it is a force multiplier in a lot of ways, but I think it's just one more tool in our arsenal, and it's really not going to replace like human red teamers, at least in the near future, in my perspective. So I think like the real skill is going to be like knowing when and how to use it effectively, and then like, when to rely on that human intuition and experience. So I think it's going to be important to still have that human in the loop to make those critical decisions and actually like, interpret those results in context, and then course correct when necessary.
Yeah, I like to mention something about the creative mindset. Like, it's okay, AI can bring something, but like the malicious mindset comes to the human, like it's not from the machine, I think. So that's it's interesting by my perspective about AI.
It's absolutely
Yeah, exactly. So guys, any words to all the red teamers out there? So that you want to suggest or advise, especially if they're interested in the Amazon red teams?
I would say be curious and get your hands dirty is what I usually tell aspiring red teamers, right? I think there's so many resources out there these days to go and like practice and go apply your skills. Like when I was first getting started out, maybe like 10 years ago, there really wasn't like a whole lot of like dedicated like training specifically for red teaming. I mean, nowadays, like you have entire like learning paths and dedicated platforms where you can go and actually like practice your skills and test out what you've learned. And I think the other important piece is like really understanding fundamentals, right? So like networking and cloud security, like that's a must in this field. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So again, going in and learning and applying like how to, implement that and actually use it is important. So one of the things like I do personally, like I have a home lab, like an actual rack server running in my basement still, racking up my utility bill up a little bit right now in the summer, but it's at least a fun place where I can go, test out both offensive and defensive tooling, understand like the telemetry of like what I'm using, and just kind of mess around and play with some of the TTPs. So I think, the big thing is like really going out and applying your skills where you can.
I was going to add, more generally, I'm +1 on the lab comment. I think like labbing up conditions and trying to play around and implement things is like really crucial to get into the right mindset, which you described. I think the other general advice is just you keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on out there. So whether that's like making your own curated feed of like threat intelligence, like researchers you trust, like keeping your finger on like what's going on, like looking at what's what are the successful attacks or like TTPs being used at the current moment on like how things are evolving, and keep your finger on that. And then more specifically to Amazon is like obviously Amazon covers a broad scope. It's a big company, so I guess my two pieces of advice are to try and get some experience in data analysis and scalable systems, and then second to that, trying to anticipate some of the skills that you might need in some of the different divisions of Amazon. So there's no like common. There's obviously some common skills which apply everywhere, but then if you really want to stand out, it would maybe like do your research into like specific areas and what skills. It could be like hardware security, for example, which is like closer to where we are. It could be I don't know, like as Joe mentioned, it could be like more like RF, like radio type stuff as well.
Yeah, I'll kind of change or lean into what you guys both said. Just because I used to do a lot of teaching and stuff, and I like to use phrases and sayings. So if you've ever heard this is not, I didn't make this up, but you've heard the term "you must think like a threat." So people will come and bring that to you, and I say, well, that's not right. That's kind of incomplete. That's like saying I can think like a chef, and now I can cook gourmet meals. It's not quite that. You've got to learn how to act like a threat. And everything that Joe and David were saying is that's what you have to do. And that's just not the technical hands-on side. That's really important, but also applying that from a threat perspective so that you can actually make a difference on the defensive side. So, I always just tell everyone you need to get out there, get your hands dirty, and learn how to act like a threat. Don't just think like it. So this is anytime I hear someone use that word, think like a threat, I use that as an opportunity to dive in and say, well, let's kind of peel that back a little bit. So
that's amazing advising. The only problem with this interview that we need to finish. That's the problem. So thank you, guys. Thank you again for participating in this conversation. For me, it was amazing. And thank you again, the Amazon, for supporting us, supporting our village, and just last words that you would like to share with the people. Any words or how the people can find you on social media. So the floor is yours, guys.
Yeah, so I can start there. So I guess like just to zoom out, a lot of like red teaming is about drive and curiosity, in all honesty. And like the best advice that I can usually give to people is to just go and start something relevant or interesting. It's like just go and get started. Like that's the key. Because the worst like the worst case scenario is you'll probably learn something really awesome as you go through that journey. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, I would say like, have fun, be curious, and keep pushing boundaries. I mean, I feel like this field is constantly evolving, so it's really important not to lose sight on those core skills that we talked about, right? Like critical thinking, creativity, adaptability. We're the ones that have to stay ahead at the end of the day. So I think encouraging people to keep learning, think big, and just never stop asking that like, what if. So.
Yeah, I like to leave this as people ask me about red teaming all the time and becoming a red teamer. I say the reality, it can be very lonely. You're digging in and diving and researching these things, learning something that no one else may care about learning. That should not distract you. On the flip side, the red team community is one of the strongest technical communities I've ever seen. I would argue way better than our defensive side. The red team community is very tight knit. So as you're going through this and you have those, like, I'm just sitting this on the screen, spending hours trying to figure this technical thing out, there's a strong community out there. So go find your people, reach out to that community, because Not everyone is going to appreciate the work that you're doing, but there is a really, really, really strong community that will appreciate that, and it has helped me many times get through the that side of, I'd say, the lonely side of being in the red team space.
That's it, guys. Thank you so much again, and I hope to see you soon. See you guys.
Perfect.
Bye bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.